some great panels lined up, so we're going to get going on the first of them. So before we just jump right into the topic at hand for it here, we'll do some introductions so you know who everyone is. First off, we'll probably just do name, what your current role is, and then maybe let's do what your first job in IT was, because that's sometimes interesting on where you were at, or first job in tech. So first off, I'm Mike Letchin. I'm currently the field CTO for Nexenta, and I did a web page for a financial aid office for my university. I think was the first one that was like a real tech job that wasn't just fixing somebody's computer randomly.
Hi, I'm Rick Creasy. My current job, I'm a VMware certified instructor. I teach for VMware and Global Knowledge. And in my first job in IT, I was doing phone support for dial-up internet customers. It goes way back. It was not fun, no.
Same.
Hey, I'm Keith Townsend. I'm a VMware. Hello. Hey, I'm Keith Townsend. I'm a VMware solutions architect for VMware. My first IT job was phone support, third shift, future traders. It was a proprietary data platform.
My name's Sean Massey. I'm a technical architect for Ahead, a consulting firm out of Chicago. My first tech job was building a database for a really small real estate company right after college.
My name is Rebecca Fitzhugh. I work in technical marketing at Rubrik, and my first IT job was I did cryptography in the United States Marine Corps.
I'll just share Rebecca's mic, it's fine. Hi, my name is AJ Kuftik. I'm a senior architect at Highmark. We are a Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance provider in the state of Pennsylvania and a couple other states. And my first tech job was doing PC support in a steel mill.
At a steel mill, huh?
Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound. Yeah, hot, lots of random.
It's super fun when you have to wear flame retardant clothing to work.
Probably steel-toed shoes and everything.
Oh yeah, whole
nice.
thing. It's fun when they're bright orange and you go to Target after work in them.
So I know what really we wanted to kind of get into was where the things that, how'd you move to where you are kind of thing? What took you to the skills to get you into your current position, hence starting with what your first job was. So since you were at a steel mill, what got you out of the steel mill? We'll start with that. What were the skills that you thought that really needed to get you out of the steel mill?
There were technical skills and people skills they're two different things. The first one was starting to think through larger projects, starting to think through larger things. Even when you're doing PC support, you still have to do big things, replace PCs for production purposes, lease replacements, that sort of stuff, and starting to build through all of those various components and what needs to be done and timelines. That was a big deal. Also, the fear of everything around you usually drives you out first.
So you said you were doing phone support to start. Wow, that got really loud all of a sudden. You were doing phone support. So what got you away from the phones?
Well, what initially got me out was I got my CCNA in about 1999, and that was my first certification. And so that kind of set me up to take the next step and get into the networking team there. And then from there, I just kind of continued to work my way from there.
So certifications is an interesting one. What do you guys think? Are certs one of those skills that you have to move up now? Or what's your take on that? And just anybody jump in. No.
Yeah, so since my mic works,
no.
Whoa.
Yeah, baby.
His mic works now.
It's new gear. New gear.
Get this guy a T-shirt for best mic handling, please.
Yeah, there you go.
you know what? I don't think certifications are as critical as they.
I think you just went back out again.
Yeah, I don't think. Can you guys hear me? All right. So I don't think certifications are as critical today as they were when I started back in the mid-90s. I think the industry is shifting over from having those hard skills to softer skills.
I think it depends on what type of job you want, though, as well, right? A lot of corporations, you may have to get a certification to kind of move to that next team, there's other paths also to demonstrate that knowledge. If you work in any sort of consulting or professional services organization, your employers are incented to have certified people. And in order to advance and in order to get your company the better discounts and whatever else that comes with the different tiers of the partner programs, you have to have certifications. So in a way, having more certifications in those roles helps you advance your career.
So it helps you advance your career if you want to stay hands-on technical.
Well, not
with
necessarily
them,
even
or do you think outside of that too?
Outside of that too, because even if you're in a sales role, there's sales-specific certifications, or even just having the certifications helps the overall organization. But that's in one narrow part of the industry.
Yeah, so I spent most of my time on the customer side, and I think it was important for my partners, resellers, etc., to have certifications. But the team that I worked on, you know, you could be like literally you go into an organization, a customer side organization today, they can't tell you the difference between a VCP, a VCDX, or a vExpert. They're all the same thing to
true.
them. So vExperts rock.
So what I would say is that if you want to move forward in your career, it doesn't necessarily mean that certifications are bad. They can certainly be a goal that you work towards. There's certain things that you have to learn as part of that you might not see in your day-to-day operations. But if you're going to do it for you. Don't do it because there's going to be a pay raise at the end of that rainbow, because there usually isn't.
So you need it sometimes for the resellers. You might need maybe a bonus or something involved
right,
if you're in-house for a shop. And what about for a vendor? Do you think working for a vendor, do the certs really matter at all? I have my opinion.
Well, my hiring manager is sitting right there, so that might be a better person to ask. I think no. I mean, for me, I've always kind of personally viewed certifications as being the metric to prove to myself that I attain the skills as a part of the studying. Because for me, I'll say I want to learn Azure, or I want to learn something, and if I don't give myself something to work towards, like a certification, I'm not going to do it. So it's more of what I'm learning in the studying process, and then I just do the test as the goal to work towards that actual certification.
So I purposely kind of kept you out of it for a second. As an instructor for it, it's helpful for you if people get certified.
Well, I would say two things, just to kind of piggyback off of what Rebecca just said. As somebody who's done a lot of hiring over the years, to me, what she said echoes why I like to hire people with certifications, because it shows that not necessarily that they just got certified, but that they had the ambition to do something to differentiate themselves. And I think it almost demonstrates more in that regard than it does actual technical knowledge, because, you know, lots of people, like you said, don't really know what each certification is, but it does demonstrate that they have some sort of ambition and have put extra work in to get to that point. So I think that's very valuable. And from an instructor perspective, I get asked all the time by my students, you know, is this certification going to get me a job? And I say, well, not necessarily, but it can't hurt. And it might help you get your foot in a door that otherwise you would not get your foot in, you know. So I would say, no, they're not a magic bullet to get you everything you want in your career, but they can be kind of the thing that gets you moving in that direction. And I think that's really the most valuable thing of all, is to get your foot in the door and get started.
So I think that goes on to the comment about soft skills a bit too. So even once you get in the door, you got to get through the interview process of some sort. How much of even getting in the door do you think is more networking and the people you know nowadays versus dropping it? I mean, how many people have actually gotten a job from putting their resume on Monster recently? Is Monster even still around?
Maybe.
There's a couple of them. I don't necessarily know that Monster is the biggest one anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I think networking in particular, knowing people, maintaining communications. So you're here, you're at VMWorld, you're meeting a lot of people. There's a lot of people in this room right now that have the capability to help you along the way, and you're showing initiative that you want to be better in your career, that you're trying to do more. And if you start talking around the room, you can find out that there are people here from vendors, there are people here from partners that can help you along that way. And I think that soft skills kind of goes a long way to what Keith was saying, is that if you have the soft skills to be able to, you know, work a room and be able to talk to people and introduce yourself. That helps, or have people introduce you.
More thoughts on soft skills down there? Or
I think your soft skills have to at least be adequate enough for you to be able to verbalize the technical skills. If you can't sell yourself and what you can do, then, I mean, what's the
doesn't matter whether you,
Exactly.
you're
You
not
can be the
even going to get
smartest-
through the interview at that point.
You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't tell me how you did something, right, or describe a methodology, or you basically verbalize whatever technical thing that you did, then I don't know that you actually can.
And to build off that, you know, the saying has always been, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But in our industry, I think it's what you know helps you meet new people in a lot of these cases, right? Because a lot of us up here on this panel, we're active in social media. You know, we're all V experts. We're all, you know, in some cases, you know, people know who you are in some ways, right? And I don't want to make that sound, you know, like, you know, I'm getting full of myself or anything.
You're kind of a big deal.
But well,
Dude,
no,
you're
I'm
so
not.
famous.
But the point I'm trying to make is a lot of us, you know, got to meet people because, you know, we were active on social media talking about technology, and then when we go to VMUGs or go to conferences, you know, it's like, oh, hey, I'm so and so. Yeah, I know who you are because I follow you on Twitter, or I read your blog, or you introduce yourself, going, hey, I've wanted to meet you because your blog has helped me. So what you know helps you meet new people.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten 2 jobs through Twitter, so social media works sometimes.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I quit my job via social media.
Is 6 working?
No.
Okay,
Oh,
here.
again.
I thought we had it fixed.
That's okay.
I was wrong.
You know, really simple example of both ends of the soft skill, developing soft skill over a long career, and you knowing someone. You knowing someone can help you overcome poor soft skills. Case in point, right after I graduated high school, no college, didn't have any kind of track on a job. So I went, you know, the fast food restaurant route, applied for this Wendy's like 3 times, got interviewed, couldn't get the job, talked to my cousin who worked there, put in a good word for me. The manager came back and told me, like, you know what, Keith, I actually thought you were, I think the proper term is mentally undeveloped at the time that I interviewed you, just because I was soft-spoken, I was very timid, and because my cousin put in a good word for me, I got the job. That, you know, you fast forward today, how many times have you seen people you're thinking, man, that guy really doesn't know what he's doing? It's all about who you know a lot versus your actual skill.
I'm still stuck on you being soft-spoken.
Hard lesson. You know what? Whenever I try and, whenever I shrink back, this is my natural personality is to shrink back. I remember those words. They're burnt from, you know, a lot of years ago. Those words are burnt into the back of my mind, so I make sure not to do that.
So that brings up the kind of that shrinking back into it. A lot of people consider themselves, whether they're introvert or extrovert, and a lot of people in this industry would really consider themselves normally an introvert. So if you're going to say, okay, you've got to step out of your box some, but what kind of advice would you give for them to be able to kind of, what can they do that isn't going to be overwhelming and just make it so much harder to do that networking and that next step to help their skill set?
Be friends with an extrovert.
Yeah.
I mean, go be friends with Ariel, and he'll take you to. He'll have you meet every single human in this room. Meet people who want you to meet people. Hey, this is Rebecca. You should totally talk to Rebecca. She's really great. Rebecca doesn't want to talk. But in terms of like,
She's kind of a big
you
deal.
start to introduce people, and you start to make connections.
Do you have a question?
And maybe maybe you're an introvert, the other person's more or less an introvert, and you just don't really want to talk together. But you can have a conversation one-on-one versus being in a room with 20 people with a microphone in your hand. There's 2 separate ways to do that. And I don't think that necessarily that being an introvert that doesn't mean that you don't like being around people all the time. Sometimes it can mean that you really like to have one-on-one conversations or maybe very small group discussions versus, you know, blathering on a stream.
Sitting on a panel just talking at people?
Yeah, that.
Well, I think, like, if you think about it, like, I think I would consider myself an introvert. I think probably Sean would, just because
I'm
I know
definitely
Sean.
one.
the best on the panel. And it's like, so when you think about it, it's like extroverts get energy from talking to people, and introverts lose energy from talking to people. So it's kind of knowing how much juice, if you will, you have in the bank, and not pushing yourself beyond that limit where, like, when I hit that social limit, I shut down. I'm done. And then I'm probably going to turn into a cranky 2-year-old approximately, where I'm like, I want to go home. So it's I need to know when I'm hitting that limit, and it's time to politely excuse myself and go home.
And I think your level of comfort with the people you're with also helps with that, right? Being with Ariel, he makes you feel very comfortable. He's very good at introducing you to people. So even as an introvert, it's not as taxing. Whereas if I'm alone in a room of 100 people and I have to introduce myself and walk up to people, that's a little bit harder. But now at a VMworld, I'm pointing at Rebecca because it's easy. But now at VMworld, you know more people, you're more comfortable with them, so it's easier to walk up and start the conversation. And then as somebody comes by, you know somebody, you can introduce them, or they know somebody, they introduce you. So it's just a different dynamic as you get more comfortable with the people in the community.
So I would add in that even if you're an extrovert, introducing yourself to someone you don't know is still terrifying.
Yeah, I definitely would consider myself an extrovert. It's still not the easiest thing in the world. Just randomly walk up to someone you don't know all the time. It's not that easy all the time. So not just on the networking on the soft skills, but looking at career-wise on it, are things like working on your presentation skills. Would you guys consider that a valuable, more soft skill that people should be doing to grow their careers on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was really the key engine to me getting promoted into management, was working on my presentation skills. And I'm an introvert myself, but I've chosen a career that every week puts me in front of a new group of students. And it sometimes is challenging. What I would say is, like, the mantra that I adopted early on was, if you're uncomfortable doing something, the best thing you can do is just do it over and over and over again, and that's the only way to get over it.
Doesn't count for driving a car.
No,
if you're uncomfortable, get off the road.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I would do. So the way I became a trainer is developing my own training content in-house for the companies that I worked for. That was also how I got visibility and kind of separated myself from the pack. And, the more you do it, just the more comfortable it gets. And so by nature, similar to Rebecca, I don't like being in front of people, talking to a bunch of people, but eventually it starts to become comfortable to you,
What do you guys think about presentation skills?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's what drives value to the business that you work for and the team that you're on. So it, for me, is equally important in my particular role to be able to get on stage and talk to 1,000+ people, as it is for me to be able to stand in front of my peers or my immediate team and justify an idea or ask for budget or to make other things happen. So to put it in perspective, not everybody has a role where they have to go stand in front of 1,000 people. So what's more important for you is not being able to necessarily get up on this panel and talk, but for you to be able to verbalize an idea to your team, get buy-in, and make that happen. That's what's really important. And to be honest, that's harder and scarier than bidding up here or being on a stage of 1,000 people. Because when you're on a stage of 1,000 people, I don't know any of you. And there's lights in my eyes. I can't see what's going on. When I have to stand up in a room full of my peers and my team, that's way scarier to me. Because they are going to be like, wow, she really is as dumb as we thought.
I can't overemphasize how important presentation skills are. As we start to accept that the industry is changing, there's going to be people who create, design, and run data centers, and there are going to be people who consume those data centers at a very high abstracted layer. So our ability to show via, look at the cool script or set of servers I ran or the automation I've created, starts to move away to us consuming these services, it's going to be a little bit tougher to show your value. So you have to go up and say, you know what, this is the value I bring. This is what we've done.
You're not being cocky by saying it, but you need to tell people what you're doing.
You got to tell people, like, what is that one guy that sits in the room all day? What does he do? There's no servers anymore, so what exactly does he do? You need to be able to articulate what you do.
Yeah, I would expand it from presentation skills to communication skills in general. You need to be able
Hey guys, my name is Aditya Krishnan and I'm a technical marketing engineer at Vila. So first of all, thanks a lot to the vBrownBag folks for giving me the opportunity to stand out here and talk to you all. And I'm having a great show this year. It's been an awesome show, awesome parties and everything of that sort. My throat is actually a little dry with all the talking that I've been doing and networking that I've been doing in the show. But as a part of my job and as a technical marketing engineer, one of the things that I do is I interface with a lot of customers, consultants, as well as experts in the industry, very much like a lot of yourselves in the show. So what we kind of, as I basically talk to some of these people, we kind of come across a lot of misconceptions as well as some fallacies with regards to the hybrid cloud migration process itself. So today I'll be going through some of these hybrid cloud migration fallacies that I come across. So I'll be going through the top 6 hybrid cloud migration fallacies, and we'll go through what some of these essentially are. So the first one is everybody always wants to migrate in a big bang. So essentially, big bang migration is moving to the hybrid cloud as quickly as possible or overnight. Essentially, the problem with the big bang, the perception with the big bang migration, essentially, or the perception is it has a much lower cost and has a much and the return on investment is very quick. However, this comes with a big roadblock with the fact that it's highly risky. So it could essentially be very highly risky, and you may end up affecting some of the business critical applications within your environment. One of the other things in terms of the reality aspect of it is that it is extremely, so even the small and mid-tier companies in this day and age basically have very high amounts of data that need to be migrated. So it's going to be highly risky to migrate all this data overnight. And the other thing that you'll also notice is that the system administrators would not have had enough time to basically work with this new setup and understand this new immigration strategy. So based on one of the vExpert surveys that we did at Vila, we basically discovered that some of the recommended solutions when it comes to migration is to use an iterative process. Using an iterative process, you can actually have a rollback option. So that way you don't necessarily have to be stuck to the cloud. You can actually roll back in case there's something that happens or in case of disaster recovery and so on. And the second thing is always involve your system administrators early on in the process. Make sure they know what the setup is and make sure that they know exactly what are the different components within your cloud environment that needs to be monitored and essentially made functional for your business critical applications. Right? So this brings me to my second fallacy that we hear about quite a lot. So everybody wants to basically move to the cloud as soon as possible because they have this thing in their head that it's all in the cloud. Everything is in the cloud. Everybody's moving to the cloud, so they want to do it themselves as well. So they basically take their virtual machines on premise and take all those services to the public cloud. The perception with the lift and shift migration essentially is that it's less expensive than actually planning for the whole migration process. So that's why a lot of people do it. But in reality, as quick as it may be, it's also extremely dirty. Dirty in the process that you don't use all the native AWS or Azure features that come along with it. And it can also be extremely expensive in the long run. So, for example, this is what I generally talk to people about. So when you're actually moving from like from your on-premise environment, you may be running a particular virtual machine, but that runs like a function only for 15 minutes every day. So when you actually move to the public cloud, instead of using this huge, large virtual machine, you could just run like a Lambda function that runs 15 minutes in a day to use the CPU and the compute functionalities in those particular cases. So that is one way you can definitely that is definitely one of the use cases when it comes to planning your migration procedures. The other thing is that when you plan your migration procedures, instead of when you re-architect your migration procedures, you'll always have like a much higher performance, because there are certain applications that are always better fitted for the cloud and certain applications that are better fitted for the private environment, and it'll also lower the cost in the long run, right? So the third thing when it comes to the migration procedure itself is the ability to people don't really know what's going on in their environment. A lot of people feel they know based on all the documentations that are out there, but there is really no application, or there's really no data that they have that can tell them what their application dependencies essentially are. So that is absolutely essential and critical during the migration process. It's basically to know what the unknown virtual machines are. So essentially, like, I mean, as you all know, like, applications can be extremely complex. It's not just having, like, you know, a load balancer and like a variety of different database servers that are talking to one another. There's a huge necessity that there are huge necessities that each of these virtual machines are connected to one another, and you may end up having certain issues if they are not, or some business critical applications may actually come down in case of certain issues. So one of the solutions in these particular cases is to make sure you use like a flow analysis tool that can actually map out all these dependencies for you. And the second application would be to second thing to do is to basically weigh all these applications based on the number of dependencies that they may have. So for example, a particular application that has, like, you know, 10 different connections has to be weighed separately from something that has just like one single connection. That way you'll know what your business critical applications are, what their interdependencies are, and how they actually function with one another. So that is one of the fallacies that we come across on a day-to-day basis. And so the other thing that we hear about every so often is that, you know, private cloud is dead. First of all, like, if private cloud was dead, we wouldn't have such a huge show like the VMWorld for us today. So it is. I feel there is such a big disconnect, especially when people go onto LinkedIn and they read an article where it says that, you know, public cloud is essentially going to be extinct in the next few years, because that's not true at all. And that is really the evolution of the hybrid cloud environment. Hybrid cloud environment. So essentially, I mean, the private cloud environment provides the users with the ability to have that elasticity as well as the performance and the security as well as the elasticity and the performance of the public cloud environment, with the ability to give you that security that a private cloud environment essentially provides to you. So private cloud environments are essentially secure, airtight, as well as resilient to any of the malicious activities that may happen. And the other thing that we also noticed is that there are certain business critical applications that still need to be on premise on most circumstances. So that is something that we highly recommend as well. So in these cases, hybrid cloud is definitely the way to go. Using it for like the security, resiliency, and the elasticity essentially. Moreover, the solution like VMC on AWS is definitely a great solution in those particular cases to basically leverage all the AWS native applications while at the same time using the same UI and the same procedures that you use on VMware itself. So this brings to like my fifth point. A lot of people think that when you go into the cloud, you never actually go back, which is totally untrue. We find this to be a huge fallacy, and the reason this could be a big problem is that when you have that mentality or when you have that thought that you're not going to come back, you're not going to design for any disaster recovery in those particular cases. So it is absolutely essential to understand that you can actually roll back. And a lot of rollbacks that we've seen over the past few years have generally been due to like higher costs after migration, right? You end up paying a lot more money than you would for actually having server deployed in your private infrastructure. And the second thing is that, sometimes when you don't have these application dependencies, you don't know what their interdependencies are, you end up, your application does not essentially work as expected on the public cloud. And this could actually cause like a lot of issues when it comes to the application or the business critical application performance itself. So some of the recommended solutions in these cases would be to make sure you have proper planning before the migration procedure, make sure you recognize all the different applications within your environment, and ensure that you right-size these different virtual machines as you move from your private cloud environment to the public cloud environment, because otherwise you're going to pay a lot more money than what's actually required. The second thing is to make sure you have a solution that can help you do a pre-migration assessment, in the sense that look at all your different dependencies, look at all the different virtual machines, what their utilization is at any given instance. And as you move to the public cloud itself, you need to be able to monitor these applications as they migrate from the private cloud environment to the public cloud, and see and monitor their performances during these particular instances. So that is one way. The public cloud. That is one way. That is one of the fallacies that can be busted when it comes to public cloud itself. So finally, this comes to my last point. So generally, people say that cloud deployment does not need any monitoring, and the reason that they say that cloud deployment doesn't need any monitoring is that the service provider or the cloud provider basically provides a 99.9% uptime. So although this is true, they provide a 99.9% uptime for the infrastructure, this may not be true for the applications itself. So for example, you all know this dog that kept appearing on everybody's search bar every time you typed Amazon.com on Amazon Prime Day, right? So if somebody like Amazon could have their infrastructure come down, I mean, we are no different. So it is absolutely essential to monitor our applications on a day-to-day basis and ensure what comes through, what are the throughputs, as well as what are the different performance metrics for each of these different applications. So essentially, the recommended solution for this would be to make sure you test your applications on a regular basis, and also make sure your environment is right sized. They have the sufficient amount of CPU resources, memory resources that is required in order to have them functioning at any given instance. So yeah, this comes to like all the 6 points that I covered, and a lot of this it was basically gathered using one of the vExpert surveys that we did at Vila. So we actually have a booklet that we created. So if you want to pick up one, you can always come down to the Vila booth and pick up one of the copies with all the vExpert recommendations with regards to the hybrid cloud migration procedures itself. Thank you. Yep.
Hello everyone, my name is Anderson Dubach. I'm a cloud management specialist from Brazil. So today we're going to talk about continuous integration, continuous delivery, and a little of DevOps, right? Do you want me to be like in front of the camera, right? Okay, but I like to move around. Make the camera follow me. Yeah, so this is New York, 1900, right? So where's the car? So the car is over there. There's another one over there. So this is New York, 50th Avenue, 1913. So where's the horse? So it's over there. That's transformation, right? So this guy here, Bill Roth, he talks about how companies are embracing and winning on this new world, and the 5 factors of success is timing, execution. On these 5 factors, the main ones are timing and execution, because you have to embrace a window of opportunity. That was a real transformation, right? You have to be able to execute on the right window. So companies are talking about stuff like DevOps. So they're struggling, trying to make sense of that. They're like getting beat off, right? So it's little by little, have a lot of stuff going around. So I'm going to dissect that. So we have a factory, right? So this like a conveyor belt. Software is like that. Whenever your software is on the shelf, is not being deployed, you're losing money, right? So continuous integration is to make something like this to test, test, secure, test again, build, version. You have to make something like this, like a factor, like a pipeline on that. So whenever you're not deploying, you're losing money. Your software is on the shelf. So something like this. So whenever we are talking about DevOps, we have, who here has played Angry Birds? Yeah, so we have this situation here. The developers are shipping code, right? They are bringing new features. The operations guys are trying to make stuff stick together. Who thought that the fat pigs are the good guys, right? So trying to make things stay there. So each one has this role who needs to be able to execute better. So DevOps is like an onion. We have like all these layers. The philosophy is to get things done faster, be able to embrace the business, right? We have methodology because it comes from Agile. Agile has like a lot of stuff, and the methodology is going to support that philosophy to get close to the business. And we have practices. So that is when we start talking about continuous integration, continuous delivery. And we have tools on the center of that. You cannot have DevOps and all those cool stuff of continuous integration if you don't have all these things tied together. So, because what happens is we have these little silos of automation that happens in the companies. So we need to have like a unified vision how to tie those things together. So because we have a lot of tools in our home that we can work with, right? So we have these people who is way on the front there asking for these new things, right? How can I operate with that? How can I use that? And usually they come like with a landscape from the CNCF. It's a lot to take off, and it usually goes like this, right? Because they need to know what they need to do, not what they want. It's like I'm from Brazil. I'm happy to be here in Vegas, and I have to focus here, right? It's a technology, like a sightseeing whenever you try to go do this. So we need to know what my application is, because I need a data center that is able to tie those things together, the development, the agile methodology for that, the IIS, the testing of all those stuff, like the infrastructure too. Maybe a container as a service, maybe a PaaS, delivery, whatever, whenever you need to monitor everything, right? So I have this like 3-tier application here. Does not mean anything. Web app DB, it's a caching solution. What for? It's caching, right? Oracle, some SOA, some old legacy systems. And the consumption layer for this one are the call center, the website, and the mobile app. This here is make consumptions, queries go faster. It's good for the business, right? So that caching solution has a development cycle. The important thing when you're talking about CI/CD, you need to know how things are, where they are, and how long they take to go from one to another. Because from there, you're going to start to fill the gaps. So I have this customer here that I worked in 2014 to help them get embraced with something like that. So the developer was used to build on tests on local machine. They then version that to the Bitbucket. After that, they published the binary on Nexus and go to the tracking solution. I'm done. So the architect from the customer pull or download that thing, go to the development environment, try to install. It's like a static one, so it had a lot of trouble, like glue things together. It's never able to get to test or production. He goes, oh man, it's not working. Then he goes to another tool because he had 2 tools for planning and tracking. right? Because it's a factory who's a contractor who is developing the code. Tell it's not working, guys. Wait up. And TFS is there because it's not doing anything. So what we did was try to tie some things together, reduce, because you have to, if you look at Agile, it's lean in the way, right? We have to do that on process too. That's the entire reason. So now they're doing like this. They're coding the way they are. So now they are committing inside at home using GitLab. Now I'm able to trigger something, use Jenkins to, I don't know, do quality on my code. Maybe if I have a problem, do a threshold to see if I need to notify, maybe, oh, it has a problem, it's not approved. I can put some kind of bar. Now I can like automate the build process. Can use orchestrator. In that case, we used to test, like it was a REST API that was being developed all the time. So it was really used to do Postman and then go to orchestrator and make that like a standard thing to do. And build the Docker image. Sometimes they want to do like Docker to make tests. It's not the full deploy, right? And I need to store that thing. Repository for the Java, it was a WAR file, and the registry for the Docker image. After that, we go to the continuous delivery deployment. What's the difference? One is manual, the other one is not. It's automatically, right? So whenever the guy, it's in Portuguese there, operação, so sorry, it's operation. So they were like using VRA to get those stuff together, provision everything, maybe call Ansible to do the configuration management. That's an important thing when you're talking about CI/CD, right? To maintain the state of everything. Use the orchestrator to do the DNS, backup, everything they need to do on the infrastructure side, because that is important too when we're talking about CI/CD, right? And maybe like, I want to change my configuration management too, because I don't know, I have several things. I want to like have a way to tie all those knowledge in one place. So we had like evolution of that. They start like, oh, now we're going to onboard everyone. So we have like all this Jenkins going around. We can do Jenkins on code, right? But what they had is like a million Jenkins going on. I'm a developer. When I talk about continuous integration, continuous delivery, DevOps, all I got was an API. And an API, I can make things worse. So the way we see it, they need like something like this to be able to onboard the applications, like a pipeline automation dashboard. So you can plug everything that we talk about on top of that, and you go like onboarding the applications. So you have control, like a provider for those things, right? So if I have any book to recommend for you guys, this is a new one. If you're going to talk about Kubernetes and containers, it's free. The main one is not free. The third one is not free too, but they are good books. You want to take a picture? Sorry, go ahead. I'm available. We can talk later. So that's my cue. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoy.
Hello, how are you today? Good? Surviving? Oh, it's all good. Good dinners? Good alcohol? Gambling? No? Okay. All right, so my name is Andrea Leibovici. I work for Datrium, but I'm not here actually to talk about Datrium. I'll talk in the context of the subject, but I'm also going to show you some of the options available today to do DR, disaster recovery, to VMware Cloud. There are a few options, there are a few vendors providing solutions, and I just want to talk through what it means. I'm going to talk a little bit about DR, why we need DR. Nobody really likes DR, but it's a necessary evil, right? So let's get started. So this is actually, we have one of our customers who runs a data center in Sonoma County. And I'm just illustrating because this is real, right? So they had the wildfires up here in North California. And what started as like a bushfire, it quickly extended itself into the city. And this is how close everything got to the data center. And it's interesting because I talked to some customers, and some of them will tell me, actually, this one is a true story. They said, if my data center catches on fire, I want to die in it because I don't have a DR strategy. So I don't know if you have a DR strategy, but DR is hard. DR is complex. Not only you need to think about DR on how you are implementing, but also how do you know it's actually going to work? You can test it, you can do some failover testing, and then you get in another circumstance. So we have another, it's not even a customer, it's a prospect that we're talking to, but they implemented their DR strategy in the data center to the secondary data center, and they said, okay, let's test it. So they triggered a failover to the DR side, everything worked perfectly. But 7 months of work to make everything work seamlessly. When they went to fail back to the primary data center, everything broke. And that's not uncommon. So it's complex, we don't know if it's going to work, and then when it's working, how do we move everything back? So those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about here. Does anybody have a DR plan here? Do you? Or what are you using? SRM? How do you do DR? SRM, custom scripts. To a DR site? Active DR site. Okay. Any other solution other than SRM and custom scripts here? No? Everybody using SRM? Awesome. Okay. So there are two things here when you talk about cloud, right? One is the cloud native applications that are born to live in the cloud. They use the AWS platform, Azure platform. They will leverage APIs. And then you have a slew of on-premise applications that will still be there for many years to come, either because of cost, because it's close to the database, because the engineers or developers that were working on it left many months ago, because they're running on NT and you are taking snapshots just to make sure there's nobody's out there to support. There's a number of different reasons. But those applications, we still need to protect somehow, right? We still need to have DR, orchestration, backups, and so on. So I'm focusing on that. No, I'm not saying that whatever it's creating in native in the cloud doesn't need protection. But for the most part, I believe the cloud providers will actually provide some form of solution for you to back up the data and replicate. There's different Azure regions, there's AWS regions, and so on. So we're focusing on existing applications that are living inside your data center. But as I mentioned, when you talk to your executives, they say, oh, we're not the DR. What they expect is this. Yeah, you're going to implement a software there, and now you have DR. Everything is working fine, just like an iPhone. And that's not true. That's not the way it works. Like with iOS, we don't know where the device starts, where the software starts, where the cloud starts. It's everything blended together, so much easier because it was built from the ground up. But that's not what it is, because it's more like that. You have a bunch of different technologies that we have deployed in the data center over the past 15 years that need to work together. So what could actually go wrong in a DR plan? So this is a traditional DR implementation, what you normally would have to go through to implement DR. So we're talking about production sites, SAN, backup servers, backup array, have the VMware stack, then you have networking, you have the DR side, everything needs to work together. And that's when things will fail. SRM is a great product, I'm going to talk about it, but it was created to manage all these diverse number of solutions that not necessarily were built to work together. And that's where things can fail. All good so far? So what could go wrong? So when talking specifically about VMC, there are three scenarios that they identify, which is the VMware Cloud and the AWS. They identify as their target use cases, and one of them is disaster recovery. And that's where we're focusing. The other ones, say consolidated and migrated workloads, scale, workload flexibility. but we're focusing on the DR use case today, specifically for VMware Cloud. And the beauty about VMware Cloud is that you can actually use it as DR target without having to worry about VM conversions if you're gonna do to a different cloud, so on. It's the same thing. As long as you can migrate and move back, fail back, it should be good, right? In thesis. So I mentioned I work for Datrium, but there are other solutions on the market that will do disaster recovery to cloud. There are actually only 3. Okay? So VMware has its own solution. I'm going to talk about it. It's a combination of the HCX and SRM. Veeam also has a solution, and Datrium also provides a solution for DR to cloud. So what is VMC or VMware Cloud? So here is a simple slide that demonstrates you have AWS resources, native AWS resources. In parallel, we have a VMware Cloud on AWS pod, or what they call SDDC, right? That's created per customer. And then you have vCenter that goes into hybrid link mode that connects the 2 environments, your on-prem and your cloud environment, and you see it as all to a single interface, and you manage through a single interface. So, but you still have resources there, resources here. VMware Cloud on AWS, under the covers, what they run on AWS is vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. NSX helps with the connectivity. And there are many options for you around connectivity, right? You can do L2 VPN with NSX. You can use IPsec VPNs. You can use, Amazon also provides you a number of different options there. I'm not going to go specifically under the networking configuration, but there are other vendors that also help you to sort of like make it more seamless around the network use cases. By any means, I'm talking about I work for Datrium. I'm talking about other vendors. By any means, I'm not an expert on their solutions. So anything I say